My name is Mona. I'm 35 years old, and above all else, I'm a mother. My twins Jack and Emma are 10 years old, the center of my universe, and the reason I keep moving forward even when life feels unbearably heavy. 2 years ago, when my marriage collapsed after 12 years, I thought the world had ended. David and I had built a life that from the outside looked solid. He was a successful software engineer, and I worked part-time as a pediatric nurse, so I could spend more time raising our children. But when the marriage dissolved, so did the financial security. We agreed to shared custody, but I received only minimal alimony. Suddenly, I had to take on full-time 12-hour shifts just to keep us afloat. I still remember the day I packed our lives into boxes. Emma clutched her clarinet case as if it were a lifeline. Jack, ever the artist, stuffed sketchbooks and colored pencils into his backpack. I smiled through the ache in my chest, promising them that wherever we went, we'd be together. That was enough. At least that's what I told myself. My parents, Martha and Richard, offered us shelter. Just until you're back on your feet, my father said, his heavy hand patting my shoulder as if his words alone could lessen the shame I felt. I swallowed the lump in my throat and agreed. Gratitude was the mask I wore. After all, they were opening their home to us. But underneath it lay dread. Our history was complicated, and the wounds of favoritism ran deeper than anyone outside the family could see. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who did chores without being asked, who studied late into the night, who swallowed my feelings so the family wouldn't fracture. Stephen, my younger brother, was the golden child. He could fail classes, quit jobs, bring chaos into every room, and still my parents would beam with pride. When he decided to start a tech business, they poured money into it. When he succeeded, they called it proof of his genius. Me. I spent 8 years grinding through nursing school while working nights and weekends building a steady but unglamorous life. My parents rarely bragged about me. She's dependable, my mother would say, as if it were both a compliment and a consolation prize. So when I accepted their offer after the divorce, I told myself things would be different now. They were older, maybe wiser. Maybe being grandparents would shift their priorities. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet. The first few weeks in their home weren't terrible. They converted the office into a bedroom for the twins while I took the guest room. I paid for groceries, cooked most dinners, and made sure the kids were respectful. In return, my parents helped with school drop-offs when I worked overnight shifts. I created a chart on the bathroom wall showing how much money we were saving. By Christmas, we'll have our own place, I told Jack and Emma. They smiled, believing me, and I clung to that belief too. Our days found a rhythm. Jack drew elaborate castles at the dining table while Emma practiced soccer drills in the backyard. My mother would watch them from the window, her face unreadable. Sometimes she seemed proud. Other times distracted, like she was waiting for someone else to arrive. At night, after the kids were asleep, I lay awake rehearsing gratitude in my mind. You should be thankful, I told myself. Don't stir old resentments. It's only temporary. But in quiet moments, memories crept back me as a teenager, handing over straight A report cards, while my mother fussed over Stephen's latest half-baked scheme. My father telling relatives Stephen's our big dreamer, while I cleared dishes in silence. I wanted to believe the cycle wouldn't repeat with my children. I wanted to believe my parents could love Jack and Emma without comparisons, without conditions. But even then, in those early months, I sensed a shadow in the corner of the room, a warning that history has a way of echoing louder when you try to ignore it. One Saturday morning, Emma found me reviewing bills at the kitchen counter. She leaned her chin on my shoulder and whispered, "Mom, when we have our own house again, can my room have yellow walls?" Her eyes shone with hope. "Yellow walls," I said, kissing her forehead. "And Jack can have as many shelves as he wants for his drawings." Jack piped up from the table, grinning. "And maybe a spot for a dog, just saying." We laughed, and for a brief second, I let myself imagine it, a home that belonged to us, free of old ghosts and unspoken debts. I didn't know it yet, but holding on to that dream would be the only thing keeping me steady when everything began to unravel. For now, I told myself it was only a matter of patience. A few months of sacrifice, a few months of biting my tongue. But beneath the calm surface of our new beginning, cracks were already forming. And soon the return of my brother Stephen would widen those cracks into chasms. It began with a phone call. I was midway through making dinner, Emma setting the table, Jack sketching superheroes when my mother answered the phone. I knew it was Stephen before she even spoke. Her voice softened, tinged with excitement I hadn't heard in years. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful news, she gasped. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes wide. Of course we'll be there. When she hung up, she turned to us glowing. Stephen and Melissa just had their baby boy. His name is Ethan. For a moment, the kitchen blurred. My twins exchanged glances, tentative smiles spreading on their faces. We have a cousin, Emma asked brightly. Yes, darling. A cousin, my mother said, already pulling out her phone to text Stephen again. That night, I tucked Jack and Emma into bed. Jack clutched his stuffed dragon, thoughtful. Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will like him better than us? He asked quietly. My chest tightened. Of course not, I said, stroking his hair. Love doesn't run out, Jack. It only grows. But my voice faltered, and I prayed he wouldn't notice. The weeks that followed felt like a slow eclipse. My parents transformed the formal dining room into a nursery. Brand new crib, pastel wallpaper shelves stocked with baby bottles and diapers. I stared at the room one evening, my hands tight on the doorframe. Stephen and Melissa lived across town in a 4-bedroom house, yet my parents insisted Ethan needed a space here too. They'll visit often, my mother explained briskly. It's only practical. Practical. That word would become her shield. Meanwhile, Jack and Emma's drawings were shuffled off the fridge to make room for Ethan's ultrasound pictures. At Christmas, my children unwrapped board games and sweaters, while Ethan, barely 2 months old, received a high-end stroller and silver rattle. He's the first grandson, my father said proudly, as though my twins had been placeholders in the family tree. At first, I tried to ignore it. Babies are exciting, I reminded myself. Grandparents lose their heads a little. But soon the comparisons began. Look at him, my mother cooed, bouncing Ethan. He looks just like Stephen did as a baby. The same strong jaw. She glanced at Jack and Emma briefly, then added, Well, your father's features are on you too, aren't they? The implication stung. Anything admirable in my children came from David, not me. Jack and Emma felt it too. One evening, Jack came home from school glowing. He had been chosen to represent his class in the district art show. He rushed into the kitchen, sketchbook in hand. Grandma, look, my teacher said my drawing was... Not now, Jack, she interrupted, barely glancing at him. I'm trying to help Melissa with Ethan's sleep schedule. His smile crumpled. He lowered the sketchbook and drifted upstairs without a word. I found him later sitting on his bed, sketching shadows instead of superheroes. Emma, usually bold and outspoken, grew quieter at family dinners. One night she whispered to me, Why does everyone laugh when Ethan spits up, but they get mad if we spill juice? I didn't know how to answer. I tried to make up for it. I took extra shifts to save faster, then used my rare days off to create special memories movie nights in our room, picnics in the park, whispered stories by flashlight. I even drew a savings chart on the bathroom wall, marking our progress toward independence. Just a few more months, I promised them. By Christmas, we'll be in our own home. But even as I said it, a knot formed in my stomach. Because the favoritism wasn't fading. It was growing roots, twisting through every corner of the house. One Sunday, the whole family gathered for dinner. My mother had cooked Stephen's favorite pot roast, though Emma had asked earlier if spaghetti could be on the menu. She was brushed off. During dessert, Stephen leaned back in his chair, cradling Ethan's smug in a way only he could manage. He already recognizes faces, he boasted. Doctor says he's advanced. My father chuckled. Runs in the family. You were the same Stephen. Emma muttered under her breath. Maybe he's just a baby. She stabbed her fork into her cake. Emma, my mother snapped, glaring. Don't be rude. The table fell silent. I reached under the table and squeezed her hand, trying to steady her. But in my mind, I was screaming. That night, after everyone else was asleep, I sat in the dark kitchen with a mug of cold tea. The house was quiet, except for Ethan's distant cries. I thought about Jack's downcast eyes, Emma's swallowed words, the chart on the bathroom wall. I had told them love doesn't run out. But in this house, it seemed love was rationed, measured, and distributed unequally, like some cruel inheritance. And deep down, I feared I already knew the answer to Jack's question. Maybe my parents did like Ethan better. The news came like an ambush. It was a September evening, and we were gathered around the kitchen table, me, the twins, my parents. Stephen and Melissa arrived, baby Ethan dressed in a brand new outfit that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. Stephen rubbed his hands together, excitement buzzing off him. So we finally decided to do that renovation on our house, he announced, looking directly at my parents, not at me. We've wanted this for ages, bigger kitchen, new nursery. Contractor starts next week. My mother's face lit up. Oh, Stephen, that's wonderful. Melissa shifted Ethan on her lap, her voice soft but deliberate. Only problem is, construction will take 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer. We'll need a place to stay. Before I could open my mouth, my father clapped Stephen's shoulder. "Stay here, of course. We've got plenty of room." The words landed like a stone in my chest. Actually, I started glancing at Jack and Emma. We're already tight on space. Maybe they could. My mother cut me off with a sharp look. "Family helps family, Mona. It's only temporary." And just like that, the decision was made. They moved in the following weekend. My father helped Stephen set up a portable crib in the guest room, though I noticed he had never once offered to help me assemble furniture for my kids. Melissa unpacked endless boxes, my mother happily clearing closet space for her, while my own belongings had sat in suitcases for months before I finally bought a small dresser. The change was immediate, suffocating. Keep your voices down. Ethan's napping became the new law of the house. Emma's jump rope disappeared into a closet. Jack's Lego towers were called clutter and boxed up. The TV, once reserved for a single hour of cartoons after school, now played Melissa's shows on repeat. I came home one night after a 12-hour shift, exhausted only to find Emma sitting alone on the back porch. Her knees were drawn up, her jump rope tangled beside her. "Sweetheart," I knelt down. "What's wrong?" She sniffled. "Grandma said I was too loud." But Ethan wasn't even sleeping. He was watching TV with Aunt Melissa. She just didn't want me counting jumps. Her small voice, the injustice of it, burned through me. I pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You did nothing wrong, Emma. Nothing at all." A few days later, Jack came home with a letter from school. His artwork had been selected for a district-wide exhibition. His eyes sparkled as he held up the invitation. "Grandma, look, they chose me to—" "Not now, Jack," my mother interrupted, waving him away. "I'm helping Melissa pick out curtains for their new house." I watched Jack's shoulders slump, his hands trembling as he folded the paper. He didn't argue. He just slipped upstairs silently. That night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to speak with my parents. I kept my voice steady, though inside I was shaking. "I know Stephen and Melissa need help right now," I began carefully. "But I'm worried about how Jack and Emma are being treated. They feel invisible." My father frowned. "They're oversensitive. Children need to learn babies require more attention." "Ethan isn't even here most of the day," I pointed out. "Stephen drops him at daycare. Melissa picks him up after work. Jack and Emma aren't asking for attention during those hours." My mother sighed dramatically, her eyes narrowing. "Mona, you've always been jealous of your brother. I thought you'd have grown out of that by now." Her words were a slap, dredging up old scars. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What was the point? They'd already decided who mattered in this house, and it wasn't us. As the weeks passed, Stephen and Melissa acted more like owners than guests. Stephen hosted football watch parties, his friends sprawling across the living room I'd once tried to keep tidy for the kids. Melissa began reorganizing the kitchen cabinets, scoffing at the healthy snacks I bought. One evening, I overheard Stephen talking with my father in low voices. "Contractor says renovations might take longer. Foundation issues. We'll probably extend our stay." "Stay as long as you need," my father replied warmly. "This is your home, too." The words sliced through me. My parents had never called this house mine, never once. Despite all the bills I paid, all the meals I cooked, all the sacrifices I made, I was still treated like a tolerated burden. Stephen, meanwhile, was a king returning to his palace. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pressed my hand against the kitchen counter, breathing until the dizziness passed. At dinner the following Sunday, the double standard became unbearable. My mother served all of Stephen's favorites: pot roast, mashed potatoes, buttered rolls. Jack poked at his plate, finally whispering, "Grandma, is there something else I could have? I don't really like this." Her face hardened. "When I was a child, we ate what was put in front of us. You should be grateful." Minutes later, Ethan flung his entire plate onto the floor. Everyone laughed indulgently. "He's exploring his world," Melissa explained sweetly, making no effort to clean up. Jack's eyes darted to mine, confusion clouding his face. "How come Ethan can throw food, but I can't even ask for a sandwich?" he whispered. I had no answer. All I could do was grip his hand under the table, promising silently that I wouldn't let them break him. Not him, not Emma, not anymore. By October, the house felt like a stage where my children and I played the unwanted extras. Stephen and Melissa took center stage, Ethan their star prop, while my parents clapped from the wings. Every attempt I made to keep the peace was met with subtle slaps in the face. It started with Emma's clarinet. She had been practicing for weeks for her upcoming evaluation, her teacher even calling her promising. One afternoon, she sat up in the living room, cheeks pink with excitement. Notes filled the air, shaky but hopeful. Within minutes, Melissa stormed in, cradling Ethan dramatically. "Can you not do that right now? He's trying to nap." and I have an important call in 10 minutes. Emma's face fell. But my teacher, Melissa cut her off with a dismissive wave. Practice your little hobby later. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought it might crack. Later that night, Emma admitted she'd missed her scheduled virtual session with her band teacher. She sobbed quietly, shoulders shaking. Why does Aunt Melissa get to decide everything, she whispered? I didn't answer. Because the truth that Melissa's convenience outweighed Emma's passion in this house would have broken her. Jack wasn't doing any better. His teacher emailed me, concerned about his silence in class and slipping grades. He used to be our most enthusiastic student, she wrote. Now he barely raises his hand. When I asked him about it, he shrugged, eyes downcast. I'm just tired. But later in the car, he admitted the truth. I can't sleep, Mom. I keep worrying about making Grandma and Grandpa mad. They get upset at us for everything, but never at Ethan. His voice cracked. It feels like we don't matter here. The words gutted me. My beautiful boy, the one who once filled notebooks with castles and dragons, now afraid to even breathe too loudly. I tried once again to reason with my parents. I'm worried about the kids, I said one evening after dinner, when the twins had retreated upstairs. They feel invisible, unwanted. Emma cried herself to sleep over her clarinet. Jack is falling behind at school. My father sighed, as if I were a nuisance. Children are resilient. They'll adjust. And babies need more attention, my mother added pointedly, rocking Ethan on her lap. You were always jealous of Stephen. I'm not surprised you're jealous of Ethan, too. Jealous. The word landed like a slap. I stared at her stunned, the same old accusation rising like bile. That was how she saw me, not as a mother fighting for her children, but as a petty sister still competing for scraps of affection. I left the room without a word. Silence was safer than letting the rage spill out. The favoritism seeped into every corner of life. At a family dinner one Sunday, my mother launched into a monologue about Ethan's gifts. He's only 9 months old and already trying to stand. Clearly advanced, just like Stephen was. She turned to Jack, who had been pushing peas around his plate. Too bad you didn't inherit those athletic genes from your father's side. I saw Jack flinch, his fork clattering against his plate. He didn't look up. My Aunt Susan, seated across the table, caught my eye, her expression tight with concern. Later, she pulled me aside in the hallway. How long has it been like this? She asked softly. Always, I admitted, voice breaking. But worse since Stephen moved in. This isn't healthy, Mona, she said firmly. For you or for those kids, they deserve better. Her words echoed what my coworker Nancy had told me weeks earlier. I had brushed it off, then clinging to the hope things would improve. But two different voices from two different corners of my life couldn't both be wrong. That night, unable to sleep, I overheard Stephen in the kitchen with my father. And honestly, why should I pay for a place while the renovations drag on? This works out perfectly. My father chuckled, pouring him another glass of whiskey. Exactly. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. This is your home. Your home. The word stabbed deeper than I expected. I'd been living here 2 years, contributing money, cooking meals, raising 2 children, yet I was still treated as a squatter, a temporary inconvenience. Stephen walked in and instantly received what I never had, belonging. I pressed my hand over my mouth in the dark hallway, my breath shaky. Rage, grief, and clarity washed over me all at once. They weren't going to change. They had shown me again and again who they were. And I realized with a cold certainty I couldn't wait for Christmas. I couldn't wait another month, another week, another day for my parents to respect my children. If I didn't protect them, no one else would. It was a Tuesday in late October when the texts started flooding my phone. I was on my lunch break at the hospital, hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic, when I noticed Jack's name blinking across the screen. Mom, something weird is happening. Grandpa and Uncle Stephen are moving our stuff. Seconds later, Emma Grandma says we have to move to the basement. This isn't fair. Another from Jack. Mom, please come home. They took all our things downstairs. And then Emma breaking my heart with 3 words I hated here. The cafeteria hummed with chatter and clattering trays, but all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. My fingers shook as I called the house. No answer. I tried both kids' phones. Nothing. Finally, I texted Emma. I'll be home as soon as I can. Stay calm. I love you both. My supervisor didn't hesitate when I explained. Go, she said firmly. Still, it took nearly an hour to hand off patients and complete critical notes. By the time I slid behind the wheel, my chest was tight, every red light a personal insult. The drive home felt endless. When I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed in the evening light, familiar and foreign, all at once. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands steady on the steering wheel. Don't storm in. Assess first. Inside, Jack and Emma sat huddled on the couch, their eyes rimmed with red. They bolted into my arms the second I crossed the threshold. They moved everything, Mom, Emma cried. All our clothes, our toys, our beds, downstairs, to the basement. Jack nodded miserably. Grandpa said Uncle Stephen's family needs more space because they're more important right now. The words tore something inside me clean open. In the kitchen, I found my mother sipping tea with Melissa, both calm as if they hadn't just upended two children's lives. Stephen and my father were nowhere in sight. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharp but quiet. Melissa didn't flinch. "We needed more room for Ethan's nursery and my home office, so we adjusted the arrangements." Adjusted? My voice cracked like ice. "You shoved my children into a damp, unfinished basement without so much as a conversation." My mother finally met my eyes, her tone clipped. It was the logical solution. The children are older, they can adapt more easily than a baby. Besides, Ethan deserves the best rooms. He's here all day while your children are at school. Her casual cruelty stole my breath. "The basement has mold," I said flatly. "It's freezing in winter. There's barely a window, and Jack has asthma." "You're being dramatic," she dismissed, waving her hand. "They'll manage." Just then, the back door opened. My father and Stephen came in, dust on their hands, satisfaction on their faces. "Oh, good, you're home," my father said. "We've made some changes we need to discuss." I stared at him incredulous. "You move my children's belongings without my permission. That's not a change, it's a violation." Stephen shrugged. "We need the space upstairs. Ethan's more mobile now. Melissa needs somewhere quiet for calls. The basement is fine. We put in lights, laid down carpet scraps. Be grateful they have a place at all." Something inside me snapped. "Grateful," I repeated slowly, my hands trembling. "My kids deserve safe, comfortable rooms, not a damp storage space you wouldn't even put a guest in." "You're overreacting as usual," Stephen said with a smirk. "Kids are resilient. Melissa and I grew up with worse." That was a lie. I knew Melissa had grown up in a 5-bedroom home with a manicured lawn. Jack and Emma hovered in the doorway, silent, their faces pale. They were watching, listening, waiting for me to decide if I'd fight for them. I turned to my parents, to my brother, to Melissa. None of them showed shame. None of them even looked uncertain. To them, this was perfectly reasonable. Stephen's family deserved the best, and mine deserved scraps. I felt something solidify inside me, a calm clarity that had eluded me for years. "You've made it abundantly clear where we stand in this family," I said quietly, "and you've crossed a line." Melissa rolled her eyes. "It's just a room shuffle. Don't be so sensitive." I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "Would you call it a shuffle if someone forced Ethan to sleep in a cold, moldy basement? If someone told you your child deserved less?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. No answer. My father flushed red. "After everything we've done for you, you dare talk like this? We gave you a roof over your head for 2 years, and this is your gratitude." I met his glare with something new in my eyes, resolve. "You didn't give me a roof. You tolerated me. You tolerated my children. And today you made sure they knew exactly how little they matter to you." Silence stretched. Stephen smirked, leaning against the counter. "So what now, Mona? You going to storm off with no plan? Where will you even go?" "We all know you can't afford it." His words, meant to humiliate, felt like fuel. Because I did have a plan. I thought of the lease I'd signed weeks ago, the small house waiting for us, the furniture ordered in secret. For the first time, their smug certainty didn't scare me. It empowered me. I turned to my children, who stood frozen by the doorway. I forced a smile, gentle but firm. "Pack your bags," I told them. "Take the things that matter most. We'll come back for the rest later." Their eyes widened, then lit with something I hadn't seen in months, hope. Behind me, my father sputtered. "Don't be ridiculous, Mona. No one is asking you to leave." But I already had. For a heartbeat, the room froze. My father's face turned crimson. "Mona, stop being dramatic. No one is asking you to leave." But I wasn't dramatic. I was clear. I looked at Jack and Emma, still hovering by the stairs. "Go on," I said gently. "Pack your backpacks with your most important things. We'll get the rest later." Emma's eyes flickered between me and her grandparents, uncertain. Jack's hand clutched his sketchbook tight. Then slowly they nodded and hurried upstairs. The sound of their feet on the steps was like thunder in my chest. My father planted himself in front of me. "You're not taking them anywhere tonight. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You're being ungrateful." I almost laughed at the word. "Ungrateful," I repeated. "You moved my children into a basement with mold, knowing full well Jack has asthma. You told them their cousin deserves better rooms, and I'm the ungrateful one. My mother's voice cracked with manufactured hurt. We raised you, Mona. We sacrificed for you. How dare you walk out because things didn't go your way? I turned on her, my voice low, steady, lethal. This isn't about things not going my way. This is about my children being humiliated, dismissed, and shoved aside in their own home. You've shown them in word and deed that they don't matter. I won't let them believe that. Melissa scoffed from the corner, bouncing Ethan on her hip. Oh, please. It's just a bedroom change. You're being ridiculously oversensitive. My head snapped toward her. Would you call it oversensitive if someone shoved your baby into a cold, damp basement with spiders crawling on the walls? Her mouth opened, but no words came. For once, she had no script. Stephen stepped forward, smirking. Come on, sis. Be rational. Where are you even going to go? We all know you've barely been scraping by. What another couch to crash on. It was meant to cut me down the way it always had when we were kids. But this time, the smirk only fueled me. You're wrong, I said evenly. I've been saving since the day I moved in here. I've worked extra shifts, built an emergency fund. 3 weeks ago, I signed a lease on a house not far from here. The silence was electric. My father blinked, stunned. My mother's mouth dropped open. Stephen's smirk faltered. Even Melissa's eyes widened. You what? My mother stammered. You planned this. Behind our backs. I planned to protect my children, I corrected. I planned to give them a home where they'd never again be told they are less important than anyone else. I planned to finally step out from under the shadow of this house. Footsteps creaked down the stairs. Jack and Emma returned, backpacks, bulging eyes, bright with something new, relief. Emma clutched her clarinet case like a shield. Jack held his stuffed dragon, the one he'd had since he was 3. We're ready, Mom, Emma said, her voice steadier than I expected. My father's face darkened. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. I met his glare sadness pooling somewhere deep in my chest, but my voice didn't waver. I stopped expecting to be welcomed a long time ago. I guided the kids toward the door. My mother rushed after me. Mona, wait. Don't do this. You'll regret it. I turned, looking her straight in the eye. The only thing I regret is staying long enough for my kids to believe they weren't wanted. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stop. Stephen tried one last jab. You can't survive without us. You'll come crawling back. I smiled faintly, not with humor, but with certainty. Watch me. We stepped outside. The evening air was sharp, cool against my face, tasting like freedom. I loaded the kids' bags into the car, my hands steady now. Emma looked up at me as I buckled her in. Are we really leaving for good? Yes, I said softly. Tonight. Jack clutched his dragon tight. Then where will we sleep? I glanced back at the glowing house, at the silhouettes in the window, watching us with disbelief, anger, and maybe fear. Then I smiled at my children. Somewhere we belong. I slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and pulled away. Behind us, the house shrank in the rearview mirror. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt the weight begin to lift. Nancy's porch light glowed like a beacon in the night. When we pulled into her driveway, she was already waiting at the door, arms crossed, a worried crease between her brows. Mona, she said softly when she saw my face. Then she spotted Jack and Emma climbing out of the car with their bags, and her expression softened into warmth. Come inside, she urged. I've set up the guest room air mattress for the kids' queen bed for you, and there's ice cream in the freezer. Emma's eyes widened. Ice cream. On a school night, Nancy winked. Special occasion. For the first time in months, my daughter smiled. That night, the twins sat in Nancy's living room, giggling through mouthfuls of Rocky Road, while a rented movie played in the background. I sat with Nancy in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I can't believe they did it, I whispered the words, catching. Moved their things into the basement like they were furniture. Nancy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing leaving. It takes guts to draw a line with family, especially when they think they own you. My eyes burned. I should have done it sooner. Before Jack stopped drawing, before Emma stopped playing her clarinet. You did it now, she said firmly. That's what matters. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The next morning, I woke to the sound of quiet breathing. Jack and Emma had crawled into bed with me sometime during the night, their bodies curled against mine, like they had when they were little. They slept soundly, no tossing, no tears. I stroked their hair, and the thought rose unbidden. This is what peace feels like. But it wouldn't last. We still had to go back. By mid-morning, I pulled up in front of my parents' house. Jack and Emma were silent in the backseat, backpacks hugged to their chests. Remember what we talked about, I told them. We're here to pack. Take what you love. We can replace the rest. They nodded solemnly. My father opened the door, his expression a scowl. Come to apologize for your tantrum? No, I said evenly. I came to get our things. His jaw tightened. Inside, my mother sat stiffly on the couch, eyes swollen from crying. Stephen and Melissa were conveniently absent, though traces of them lingered. Melissa's laundry draped across a chair, Ethan's toys scattered across the floor. Jack and Emma slipped upstairs to pack. My mother's voice cracked as soon as they were gone. I can't believe you're doing this to us, Mona, after everything we've given you. I stood tall, steady. This isn't something I'm doing to you. It's something I'm doing for my children. They deserve better than to be told they're second class in their own family. My father paced the room. This is about Stephen, isn't it? You've always been jealous of him. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, this is about Jack and Emma being shoved into a basement because Ethan deserved the better rooms. You said it yourselves. My mother flinched, looking away. Upstairs, drawers opened and closed, the muffled sounds of packing drifting down. I climbed up to check on the kids. Jack had carefully wrapped his art supplies and books, sliding them into his suitcase. Emma packed her soccer cleats and the jewelry box her father had given her. She shut it with a snap, her jaw tight. Ready, I asked. They both nodded, but Emma's voice trembled when she whispered, Do we have to leave the pictures on the fridge? The photos she meant were the ones Melissa had taped up weeks ago, Ethan's daycare schedule, his smiling face. Their own drawings had been stuffed into a drawer. No, I said quietly, we don't need them. We'll make new ones. She gave a small, brave smile. Back downstairs, my father blocked the door again. Where are you going to go? That mysterious house you claim you rented? You think you can afford that on a nurse's salary? I set the suitcases down and faced him squarely. I make $65,000 a year as a pediatric nurse. I have excellent credit, minimal debt, and I've been saving for nearly 2 years. I signed a lease 3 weeks ago. We'll be just fine. For once, he looked genuinely surprised. You didn't know, did you? I said, my voice shaking but strong. You never even bothered to ask what I earn, how I manage what I've built. You assumed I was dependent because that fit the story you've told about me my whole life. My mother whispered, We only wanted to help. I met her eyes. Help doesn't look like telling your grandchildren they don't deserve the good rooms. Help doesn't look like silence when they cry themselves to sleep. She had no answer. It took 3 trips to the car to load everything we cared to take. Jack carried his dragon under one arm. Emma, her clarinet case strapped to her back. They walked past their grandparents without a word. At the door, my father made one last attempt. This is a mistake, Mona. You're letting pride get in the way of what's best for your children. I turned back, my voice steady. No, Dad. For the first time in years, I'm putting what's best for them first, even if it means walking away from you. His face hardened. My mother's eyes filled again, but I didn't stay to comfort them. Not this time. I opened the car door for my kids. Emma climbed in first, Jack following their shoulders, squared like tiny soldiers. And as I slid behind the wheel, I felt it, the final thread of fear, snapping. For once, I wasn't their daughter, begging for scraps of approval. I was their equal, walking away on my own terms. The house was small, old in places, and the paint on the shutters had begun to peel. But when we carried our boxes inside, it felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. Nancy and 2 co-workers came to help us move in. They carried furniture, hammered together bed frames, and laughed loudly in the echoing rooms. Someone brought balloons for the twins. Jack tied his to his stuffed dragon. Emma taped hers to her clarinet case. By evening, the essentials were in place. Beds, a table, a couch, and the kitchen smelled of melted cheese and garlic. We ate pizza cross-legged on the living room floor, paper plates balanced on our knees. Emma leaned against me, her mouth full of laughter. Jack sprawled on the rug, doodling superheroes on the cardboard box his bed frame had come in. For the first time in 2 years, my children looked weightless. Later, when the house fell quiet, I sat alone in the half-unpacked living room. Empty boxes towered in corners. The air still smelled faintly of paint, and my hands shook as I held a glass of water. But the tears that slipped down my cheeks weren't from exhaustion this time. They were from relief. We were free. The days that followed brought a kind of joy I had almost forgotten existed. Jack began drawing again, covering his new shelves with sketches of castles, dragons, and much to my surprise, a superhero with a nurse's badge. She saves people like you, he explained shyly. Emma practiced her clarinet every evening in her own room, notes drifting down the hallway without anyone shushing her. Her confidence returned quickly, her teacher emailing me to say she was thriving. At school, both children blossomed. Jack's teacher wrote to say his spark was back, his hand once again raised in class. Emma joined the band's advance group and began talking about trying out for soccer. It was as if the weight of silence and disapproval had been lifted from their shoulders. At the hospital, my supervisor noticed the change in me, too. "You've studied," she said one afternoon. A week later, she called me into her office. "We'd like to promote you to charge nurse on the pediatric floor." The salary increase was significant, but what mattered most were the hours, fewer nights, more regular shifts. It meant I could be there for bedtime stories, school projects, clarinet practice. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. My parents, of course, couldn't stay away. 2 weeks after we moved, they appeared at my doorstep unannounced. I almost didn't open the door. But Jack and Emma were home, and I wanted them to see that I wasn't afraid anymore. My father's eyes swept over the small living room, the mismatched furniture, the boxes still stacked against the wall. "Smaller than I expected," he muttered. "It's perfect for us," I replied simply. My mother tried another tactic, her tone soft coaxing. "The children need their grandparents, Mona, and their uncle, and their cousin. They need respect and kindness," I countered. "When you can give them that, you're welcome in their lives." She bristled. "We've always loved them." I shook my head. "Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's how you treat people. It's the choices you make every day." Her eyes dropped, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flicker there. We spoke for nearly an hour, cycling through their guilt trips, their insistence on family unity, until finally my father muttered, "Maybe we didn't realize how it looked from your perspective." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first crack in their certainty. Weeks passed. We carved routines into our new life. Sunday mornings became pancake breakfasts. Friday nights turned into movie marathons on the couch. The fridge door was plastered with Jack's drawings and Emma's practice schedules, no one to take them down this time. One night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she whispered, "I like our house, Mom. I feel like I can breathe here." I smoothed her hair, my throat tight. "So do I, sweetheart." In that moment, I realized it wasn't just a rental. It was a sanctuary, a place where we weren't second class, where laughter was louder than criticism, where my children knew without doubt that they were wanted. We were home. It didn't take long for the balance of power in my old house to shift once we were gone. At first, Stephen and Melissa seemed smug, as though our absence confirmed what they'd always believed, that I had been the problem. But soon the complaints trickled through the family grapevine. Melissa confided to a cousin that she was exhausted juggling work and a baby without anyone picking up the slack. Stephen grumbled that the renovation costs had ballooned, that money was tighter than expected. My mother, suddenly without me to cook, clean, and wrangle the twins, began to sound weary on the phone. "She's running herself ragged with Ethan," Aunt Susan told me one afternoon. "She said she didn't realize how much you'd been doing until you left." The irony was bitter on my tongue. For years I had been invisible. Only in my absence did they finally see me. When my mother visited alone one quiet Saturday, she looked older. Her shoulders slumped under invisible weight. She sat at my kitchen table, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. "I've been thinking a lot about last fall," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much we were hurting Jack and Emma, or you." I studied her face, searching for manipulation, for the sharpness I'd grown up fearing. Instead, I saw something else, fatigue, and maybe the faintest flicker of regret. "You told them Ethan deserved better rooms," I reminded her softly. Her eyes welled. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. "But that's what they heard," I said, "and it broke them." She nodded, looking down. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was closer than I'd ever gotten before. Meanwhile, Stephen and Melissa weren't faring well. I heard whispers of arguments late at night, Melissa's voice sharp enough to carry through the walls of their half-renovated house. They fought over childcare, over money, over Stephen's hours at work. Couples counseling my mother admitted one day, as though confessing a sin. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part, the tired human part, felt only pity. They had built their marriage on shaky ground and without my parents' endless enabling. The cracks were finally visible. Jack and Emma, meanwhile, were blooming. Jack's art teacher invited him to join an after-school program praising his imagination. He filled entire sketchbooks with landscapes and characters, each one brighter than the last. One evening, he handed me a drawing of a castle with 3 figures inside me, Emma and him. The walls were strong, the doors wide open. "It's us," he said proudly. "Safe inside." Emma joined the advance band and began practicing for soccer tryouts. She carried herself differently now, her chin higher, her laughter quicker. One night, as we worked on a puzzle together, she looked up and asked Mom, "Why did Grandma and Grandpa treat us differently than Ethan?" The question sliced through me. Sometimes, I said carefully, people hold on to old stories. They saw Uncle Stephen as special when we were kids, and they never let go of that story. When Ethan came along, they transferred all that attention to him. But we're their grandkids too, Jack said quietly, placing a piece into the puzzle. Yes, I agreed, my throat tight. And they do love you, but they didn't know how to show it fairly. That's why we left, because everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. They nodded, slowly processing. Children have a way of distilling truth more clearly than adults ever can. At night, when the kids were asleep, I sometimes sat alone in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I thought about my childhood, the years of being the dependable one, the invisible one. The way I had swallowed hurt after hurt, telling myself it was normal, it was family, it was love. And I wondered if that was why it had taken me so long to leave. Because deep down I had believed the same lie, that my worth was conditional, that love had to be earned by sacrifice. But watching Jack sketch freely, Emma practice without fear, I knew I had broken the cycle. They would never wonder if they deserved less. Not while I had breath in my body. 6 months after the night we packed our bags, I signed the papers that would change everything. The house wasn't large, 3 bedrooms, a narrow backyard, peeling shutters. But it was ours. I clutched the keys in my palm as though they were gold, the metal warm from the notary's hand. When I picked up Jack and Emma from school, I held the keys high. Guess what? Emma's eyes went wide. Is it ours? Yes, I said, laughing through tears. We own a house. Jack whooped, clutching his dragon to his chest. Emma jumped into my arms. Their joy was pure, unfiltered. For the first time, I felt the chains of dependency break cleanly behind us. The weeks that followed were a blur of paint swatches and moving boxes. Jack insisted his room be sky blue, while Emma campaigned for yellow walls. They argued playfully over what color to paint the front door, until we compromised with green for new beginnings, Emma said solemnly. One evening, as we unpacked, Jack asked shyly, "Can we get a dog now?" Maybe, I teased, ruffling his hair. Let's survive the boxes first. But in my heart, I knew the answer was yes. A dog would complete the family we had rebuilt from ashes. On moving day, friends from the hospital came to help, just as they had when we first rented. To my surprise, my parents showed up too. My father carried boxes, his movements stiff but determined. My mother brought a casserole, her face tight with unspoken words. By evening, the beds were set up, the kitchen shelves stocked. Laughter echoing through the bare rooms. We ordered pizza again, the same way we had in the rental, only this time it was different. This time, the walls around us belonged to no one but us. When the last car pulled away, leaving only my parents lingering awkwardly in the driveway, my father cleared his throat. You've done well, Mona. Buying a house on your own, it's no small thing. I'm proud of you. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Those were the words I'd chased my entire life, and hearing them now, I realized something I no longer needed them. But they still mattered. Thank you, Dad, I said quietly. His eyes softened. I know we haven't always been fair. Your mother and I, we want to do better. It wasn't a full apology, but for him, it was monumental. That night, I stood on the back porch, the sunset painting the sky orange and pink. Jack and Emma chased each other across the yard, laughter spilling into the evening. My mother sat on the steps, watching quietly while my father leaned against the railing beside me. For once, he didn't lecture or criticize. He just watched with me. This is a good home, my mother said softly. Yes, I replied, it is. Later, as I tucked Emma into her freshly painted yellow room, she whispered, Mom, I feel like I can breathe here. I kissed her forehead, my heart swelling. So can I, sweetheart. So can I. In Jack's room, I found him sketching under the covers, the lamplight glowing soft against the blue walls. He held up his drawing, a house sturdy and warm with 3 figures in the window. He had written one word across the roof, home. As I lay in my own bed that night, exhaustion mingling with joy, I thought back to that October day when my children were shoved into the basement. At the time it had felt like the end, but now I saw it for what it was, a beginning. Sometimes betrayal is the fire that burns away illusions, leaving only truth. And sometimes walking away from the people who should have loved you best is the only way to protect the ones you love most. I had finally learned that family isn't blood or obligation. Family is respect. Family is kindness. Family is the choice every day to make each other feel valued. And as I listened to the quiet breathing of my children down the hall, I knew we had built a family strong enough to stand on its own. We had come through the storm, and at last we were home.